Welcome to Disconnecting from the Matrix, where the release is from within. Hi, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Alice Kim, and this is episode 11. Today, I'll be answering a listener question regarding anxiety on how to deal with and manage it. I'll talk a little bit about anxiety on thoughts, mind, and how all that relates to or doesn't relate to what you are. And then I will be sharing a technique that I use to directly release anxiety and any other mental disruptions quickly and for good. All coming up. All right, first, what is anxiety? Anxiety is a state of being in constant worry, distress, nervousness, fear, or any negative emotion, and quite often about some impending future situation that you don't know the outcome to. So essentially, it's an uneasiness in your mind and body that you're feeling either now or about something coming up in the future. It's that uneasy feeling that the rug's going to be pulled right out from under you at any moment, and that the proverbial shit is right about to hit the fan and splatter all over you. We've become so accustomed to anxiety these days that many people have accepted it as part of collateral damage for living in this fast-paced, fragmented, modern world. And to me, that is absolutely insane. Because the way I see it, anxiety is literally a mental disorder. It's an imbalance of the mind. That's what a mental disorder is. You've got crazy thoughts in your mind, and they're running amok. They're out of control. And these thoughts, they're like the lunatic inmates that are running the asylum of your mind, which in turn becomes the experience of your reality. And that's what the Matrix is, isn't it? It's an insane asylum. It's like a labyrinth in a funhouse that keeps you lost and confused and in terror of what's ahead, what's around the corner. And just when you finally turn the corner to be relieved to see that there was really nothing behind it, you're then faced with yet another corner and another dead end or another unknown threat in the horizon. So anxiety, it's this constant suspense of not knowing how to get out. Yet with each step, there's always the underlying fear, the suspense of something hiding in the shadows to nip at your ankles and trip you up at any moment. And this preoccupation, this focus in identifying with the reality of this anxiety, this insane mind, is the very trap that distracts you from knowing your true nature, your true self, which is the sanity of pure presence. This anxiety, the fear of the unknown, or even the fear of living in the now, it's a dense fog that obscures your sight into the clarity of your knowing self. And instead of resting in the peace and certainty of presence, which is what you are, instead of simply relaxing into yourself, you drive yourself crazy, running your mind around in an endless loop of vicious self-talk, self-doubt, and self-sabotaging thoughts that bleed into your consciousness, that start vibrating as your beingness and ends up as your reality. And even if the thing you fear never happens, does it even matter? because you've been living the experience of this fear over and over and over again in your imagination. Your mind is what perceives your world, and it doesn't know the damnedest difference between what you imagine and what's supposedly happening in your reality. But whether something is experienced in your mind or out there in your world, that's all just a moot point, really, because everything you experience, whether you think it's real or not, is all just perceptions of mind anyway. None of it is real. And if something is not real, it doesn't exist. It's nothing. It's no thing. And as nothing, there's obviously nothing then to deal with, to cope with, to manage, to process, to alleviate, or to even get rid of. Whatever you want to do about it. It's really much ado about nothing till you decide to believe in nothing. Believing in nothing, struggling with nothing, fighting nothing, resisting nothing, pushing away nothing, fearing nothing. I would say all of that is insanity. And that's what anxiety is, insanity. And what you are is not that. So let's establish the fact that anxiety is insanity, and you are not that. What you are is pure being, the unchanging, stainless presence of wholeness and peace and undisturbed stillness. To even say that you're sane isn't even appropriate, because sanity and insanity are nothing more than labels created from the matrix of mind. They're your judgments, they're your concepts, they're ideas and labels about the world. And that can't be you, because you are not a label, you're not a concept, you're not an idea, because you are beyond mind. It's said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's what anxiety is. Thinking the same thing over and over again and yet wishing something different to happen. Here you are, constantly running pictures in your mind with thoughts of impending calamity, disappointment, or whatever suffering you want to choose. And then you put that on auto repeat, yet all the while wishing and hoping that these very things that you're vibrating into existence now and into the future don't happen. Your reality is a reflection of your being. So here you are, being the thing you don't want by focusing on it and binge feeding on constant worries and fears, and yet you somehow expect the reflection to show you a different picture than the current image you have about yourself. And the word image is appropriate because everything that comes from your mind is nothing more than images. And as the degree to how much you're bought into your thoughts and beliefs is what makes them appear real and separates you from the reality of your true nature, which knows no fear, has no doubt, doesn't have a single worry in the world because it has no lack of self-worth and self-love and self-regard. It knows what it is. And if you know what you are, would you ever fear or doubt yourself? This doubt, this fear, this distress, the anxiety of not knowing what's happening or what could happen next to potentially bring you grief or even happiness. It doesn't come from the part of you that knows who and what you are. It doesn't come from your truth. It doesn't come from a place of freedom. It comes from your mind or the ego. It's all the same thing. You see, your mind, your brain, it only understands the past. It's a computer that receives information from your sense perceptions up to this point in life, and then from that pool of data, it files everything into similar categories to be pulled up for future use or reference. The mind that comes from the brain, it's meant to function this way to help you navigate the 3D by taking in your past experience and projecting that into the present or the future. It's a protective mechanism that's set in place to preserve your physical survival, to keep you from hurting yourself. But beyond the practical matters of maneuvering through our physical human life, like being able to safely drive a car or being able to cross the street without getting hit by one, this tool that we call the mind, this mental activity of projecting past associations to the present or the future, it isn't the smartest thing when it comes to our emotional and psychological states. It only knows what it thinks it knows up to this point, but it knows nothing of what's to come. So what it does is it tries to predict what can happen based on similar past scenarios. And all it's doing is cobbling together. It's stitching together a future story based on past stories. And I say past stories because whatever you think you remember about your past is not how it went down. It's just another story based on your perceptions, on how you wanted to see it. And so all that the mind operates on is on stories. They're all just stories. And this constant churning out of worrisome and fearful thoughts based on the memories of your past and then projecting that out to what's ahead, that gets in the way of experiencing newness and fulfilling new potentials and possibilities in your life. All anxiety is a worry and a fear and an uneasiness of not just the past, but of past stories. So all that means is that you're being terrorized by stories. The whole thing, it's all been made up. It's really the classic case of being in fear of nothing more than the idea of fear itself. The human mind, the ego, it only knows one thing, and that's for your survival. The constant worry and fear is really of your non-survival or your death, of no longer existing. And that's understandable, I suppose, from the perspective of mind and ego. But we aren't here just to survive. We aren't here simply to subsist. I mean, are you? I'm not. We aren't here just to merely have a pulse and barely get by with just enough. We're here to live fully now, to continually evolve and express and expand and celebrate the joy of living and of being. And in order to do that, we need the freedom to experience new things and not to be bound and tormented by the traumas and dramas and fears of the past. But anxiety and worries that come from mind, they're nothing more than replays of fearful thoughts and unpleasant experiences of the past. And although it could, to some extent, help you from repeating similar negative experiences, more often than not, it stops you from fully living life. If anything, all it's doing is to assist you in reliving your past over and over again. And that's what the Buddhists call samsara, the wheel, the hamster wheel of life. And more often than not, it is a painful and uncomfortable existence. So anxiety, worry, all that stuff, they're just thoughts. and neurotic thoughts of the past at best. And then to project the pain of the past to the future is to create a self-inflicted nightmare that then becomes a closed loop that creates no opening for you to experience the new of the now. And the only way to experience the freshness of the new in the now is to stop hanging on to the past. And that's what anxiety is, hanging on to the past for fear of the unknown, whether it be now, later, tomorrow, or next year. And what's so scary about the unknown? It's just another word for diving into the field of your infinite potential. It's so exciting. It's either that or more of the same old thing. And ironically, isn't that what anxiety is about anyway? The threat of getting the same old thing yet again? So, if you no longer want the same old thing, you've got a choice. Either stick with the past or step into the unknown. And the unknown is scary only if you take your past, your anxiety with you. Release into the now and get ready to experience your true being. And now, how to release the heavy-duty, tenacious, seemingly pernicious thoughts and emotions like anxiety, anger, guilt, or shame? Before I go on, know that all thought and emotions, which are nothing but very strong thoughts, that all thoughts are just thoughts. And as I said before, they're not real and therefore they are nothing. It doesn't matter how strong the thoughts are. They're nothing. Nothing can only be nothing, no matter how intense they appear to be. So let's not forget that. But knowing that, I forget that all the time, and I'm sure you do too. And that's when they turn real and overwhelming. The stories become real once again. So what I'm about to share is the best way that I've learned so far on how to release anxiety, negative thoughts, and emotions. And the way I do it is by eating it for breakfast, you can call it. Yes, eating your disturbing thoughts for breakfast, just gobbling it up. Just inhaling that giant bowl of anxiety as if I haven't eaten in days and this is the most appetizing thing in the world. And by this, I mean I take it in, all of it. I swallow it into my being with a deep inhale. And let it take me and consume me. It's like walking straight into the center of the fire pit and letting the heat just burn me up. Again, these are all illusions, so don't be scared to take it all in. The fact that you're doing this exercise means that you already know that you are not those thoughts and those emotions. You are the consciousness that can never be touched or affected by them. So once I take it in, I just embody it. I let it shriek and scream and howl and say all kinds of stupid or hateful things and anything it needs to do to lash out and express itself. It's like a bratty kid throwing a fit, and you just have to let it burn itself out. And as this happens, a lot of stuff is going to come up. And no matter how uncomfortable it gets, I let go of any judgments and any thoughts about it. I simply allow it to be, and I stay with it in zero resistance. And this non-resistance is so important because, you see, a big part of the pain of heavy negative emotions stems from our resistance to them. Whatever you resist persists, and thoughts are no exception. Whenever there's any type of tension, whether emotional or physical, although they're usually very much interconnected, I find that it's always best to surrender to it instead of fighting it. So I guess you can say this eating anxiety for breakfast technique is simply a matter of surrendering, allowing, letting go, forgiving. They all mean the same thing. And what that means is to stop the fight, to stop the struggle, to stop wrestling and muscling and controlling and forcing your way through it. And I'm sure you know by your own experience that fighting a thing, fighting your emotions, suppressing them, repressing them, denying them, all any of that does is to intensify the very thing that you don't want to feel. So after I inhale any of the negative emotions and thoughts and mental disruptions, after I take it all in, all I do is I just sit still and quietly with myself and all of the feelings that come up. So I sit quietly with myself, take it all in, and then step aside and make way for those heavy emotions to rage on inside with zero judgment, zero resistance, with zero urgency to do anything about it. And this is important because not having a goal of trying to fix, change, or get rid of, or even trying to alleviate the situation, that's the key. I truly allow things to take its course in any manner it will. And during this time, certain memories and associations, whether with events or people, they're going to come up that's related to this feeling, these thoughts. And you're also going to feel an equivalent physical sensation like fluctuations in your body temperature, in your heartbeat. Maybe your body is going to tremble a bit. And if tears come, I let them all come out with no judgment. Again, just allowing, just surrendering to what is. Whatever and however I feel, mentally, emotionally, physically, I just let it. And then eventually, the pressure or heaviness starts to subside. And little by little, I feel more lightness and more openness as the raging fire starts to die down. And as things start to simmer down, continue to sit with it until you reach a point where you feel that it's finished its course. And you no longer feel any of the charge that you had when you first started. You should feel balanced and still and feel peace. And you should be able to breathe comfortably. In your body, you should know this because your body is going to feel very light and relaxed and open. You should be able to feel an internal smile inside you. This gentleness, this knowingness, the certainty within you that all is well. And that's when I know it's past and it's released for good, that it's run its course, that the energy has been transmuted back into pure energy now, ready to serve me in ways that I choose. And again, I can feel the release in my body as sensations of openness, lightness, and expansion. Trust your feeling, and you'll know when it has passed. Now, how long the process takes depends on the intensity of the emotions, but I find myself needing up to about 10 minutes for most cases, so it's relatively quick. And also keep in mind that certain thoughts are heavily ingrained, often spanning your entire life, if not lifetimes. And if that should be the case, related thoughts and emotions are going to swell up once again, and often again and again, because once you've started to release, it will line up to come up, asking you for the release of the rest. But know that each time you do take them on and transmute them, that particular layer, that story that you've held on to and have been so afraid of or have been resistant to, that you've been holding on to, they've been released for good. And each subsequent layer that rises up for your release can be more or less intense. But know that the big, heavy, extra nasty, stinky ones are so great because that means that you're releasing a big load of nothing. And each time a big load is released, the rest will be much easier to let go. So it's totally good when a big one comes up because that means that you have that much more that you can let go on the spot. So here you are. I hope you'll test out this technique for yourself or use them as a springboard for you to devise your own method for not just managing anxiety and any form of mental disturbances, but to actually release them forever. Remember, thoughts are nothing, and you are everything. And the more clearly you see mental disturbances for what they are not, you'll be able to relax in the peace and freedom that you are. That's all for now. I'm Alice Kim, and thanks for listening. If you would like to read additional show notes or leave a comment, please visit disconnectmatrix.com/podcast/11. Again, that's disconnectmatrix.com/podcast/11. And while you're there, please subscribe to my email list so we can stay in touch. Also, if you're on iTunes and are enjoying this show, please consider giving it a favorable rating and review for the benefit of future listeners. To contact me directly, my email is alice@disconnectmatrix.com. I welcome all your questions, comments, and any feedback that you have. Thanks again for joining me. Until next time.